You guys, welcome. We have a very special treat today. We get to hear from an actual regular guy who went through the high performance planning and HVAC calculations process and then ended up with a house that his family is now living in. And he wrote me this big long email that was like, "Hey, I just want to give you some feedback. There's like 8 points," and it was very involved. And I was so happy to hear back from him because often people who do what I do don't actually like hear back about what happened. Like, did it work? And so, since you guys don't often hear this kind of thing, I really wanted to get him saying this to you on screen. So, I would like you to meet Evangelos. Evangelos, thank you very much for taking the time tonight.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Corbett.
So, I appreciate also that you put together a little slideshow. That's always very nice. Like, you guys see each other on the YouTube channel, and then like the up. You guys keep like raising the standard. So people show up with slideshows often, and I think that that's really special. So if you would go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, so essentially what I'd like to share today is our journey and how we started and how I got involved with you to do the manual J. And essentially we have a new built house. It finished last year, moved in May. Two-story, about 4,500 square feet. And when I started thinking about, HVAC design, in my mind, I was thinking of something that needs to be right-sized and it needs to be comfortable. At that point, I wasn't necessarily thinking about IAQ, but as I started digging in and, people talking about ERVs, HRVs, that sort of thing, that took me down that path. And that became our third tenant. So right-size solution, comfortable house, then IAQ, so we don't have to get outside air and that's not filtered. And looking like 5 years maybe down the line, the ability to support us purely from solar played into us going with a heat pump versus a furnace plus AC combo. So I'll go over our system, which is essentially a Mitsubishi heat pump, a 2-ton. So that comes out to about 2,200 square feet per ton. And what I'd like to point out here is I've got it down at the bottom. Our house is not super tight. It's not like yours. I think we could probably do better, but I'd like to illustrate that because I think people are getting hung up with, oh, I need one ACH50, I need below that, I need a passive house. Our house is very comfortable. Right now in the winter, we had a few storms. It's kind of a set it and forget it situation with the thermostat. 75, maybe 76, primarily because Mitsubishi doesn't ramp up so quickly. So that's a little bit of another thing. Their algorithm, if it's a 1 degree difference, it may be going very low. So at that point, I may have to go to 76. But that's like worst case. So 75, leave it, set it and forget it. 2.4 ACH50, not crazy tight. It's tight. I would have liked to be better. And I think in the manual J, we have 1 as our target.
And that's often something that comes up, by the way. People will say, "What happens if we aim for 1, but then we get 2 or twice as
Yeah.
leaky?" And it's like, it's actually pretty simple. If you look at the manual J, you just take the infiltration portion of the load and you multiply it by 2. And often it's going to be like a 1/4 ton tops. So you multiply it by 2, it becomes a 1/2 ton. And it might change your sizing a little bit, but often it won't. The other thing is that 2.4 ACH energy code will never require, probably, anybody to build tighter than 3 ACH50 because you're hitting the point of diminishing returns right around 3 ACH50. So if you're building tighter than 3, then you're good. And by the way, so your ERV, you'll get into in a minute, I imagine, but the going with an ERV when you're building tight, if you're planning to build to 1 ACH50, definitely plan for it. And then if you don't hit it, like, you get all the benefits of having the ERV, which is
Yeah.
a nice thing. So there's not really a we celebrate if you hit really airtight, but we don't necessarily like, you know, flog ourselves if we don't hit it.
Yeah. And the ARV became important also because right now we do not have a dehumidifier. So the plan was to live the house for a year, see how it goes, how it performs. The way it did during solar season was about 48% relative humidity, just with the heat pump running and AC mode.
Nice.
And then maybe 51%. Because the thing is, we have a lot of extra insulation. I'm in the St. Louis area, but we went above code. So zip R6 outside, R15 in the walls, insulated the basement, R49 in the attic. I could have done R60, but maybe in the future. So when you've got those mild temperatures, nothing's running outside of the ERV, like, which is, it's great. But again, dealing with humidity at that point without a dehumidifier is tricky. So that's something I'm going to add to the system.
Although I will say that's really impressive that it only peaked out around 50% with that. And I think that that's a testament to what Evangelos is going to get to in a minute, which is like, trust the math. Often an HVAC professional will step into this process after you've kind of thought this through, and they'll say, you know what, let's just be safe and upsize you. We're going to install a variable system and it'll dial down. But Evangelos' system is right-sized from the top end to the bottom end, and he gets the full benefit of that full range of 100% down to 30%. And all of that is then going to pull moisture out of the air.
Exactly. And the other thing is, manual J sizes you for the worst point in the year, right? So you're going to be upsized anyways, 90% of the time. So how much more do you want to upsize the system? Like, are there going to be days that you're probably running outside of those parameters? Yes, there's going to be a heat wave. There's going to be something. In our case, it wasn't that uncomfortable. So the house may have gone to 77 or 78. But again, and you said it before, people haven't lived in a house where relative humidity is below 50. So they don't actually know how that feels, because you only blast it if you have, issues with humidity, and 78 with less than 50% humidity is fine. It's still fine. I know some people will go crazy and say, well, I set it at 68 or 70 or whatever. Like, fine. You have different issues at that point. That's why you do that. So for us, the only extra thing we did was we had an energy efficiency company come and do the air sealing for the attic. So they went through and did above and beyond what's expected at that point, which I think was great, because we took care of a lot of the penetration at that point.
And you have a vented attic, right, Evangelos?
Correct. Yeah.
And that's something else that you're like, oh, I have to have a conditioned attic if I'm going to go high performance. Not true. So that's great to see. By the way, how much, I don't know if you're going to get into this, but how much of what you've got on this screen right now did an HVAC installer try to talk you out of?
Nothing, because I was very opinionated. And at that point I had the ammunition from you and all the data, and my background is data engineering, data science anyway. So if I have the numbers, I trust the math behind it and the science. So at that point, the only thing that I got as extra information is this guy's they don't know what they're talking about. So I'll go with someone else, which was the case, with a few of the companies I talked to. So if someone started saying, well, okay, how about you have a split system? And then I asked them, okay, well, how about the ERV? How about the humidifier? Well, yeah, okay, so you can only add it to the downstairs system. Okay, so how about the upstairs? Is it going to have nothing there? So that was a red flag there.
I love that you are out there schooling a bunch of HVAC guys who are coming over to your house for free to take a lesson from you. That's great.
So yeah, so that's the setup right now. Aprilaire humidifier, Zehnder ERV, and the 2-tank heat pump. Single zone system for the ducts, and then central returns is what we have in, one per level. These work great. Whisper quiet, you don't hear even full speed, you won't hear anything. So I deeply appreciate that.
That's
Um,
awesome. I'd like to just jump in real quick. I'm sorry to keep interrupting you, but I just love that the attention to detail that you're paying on this. The central returns, often you'll get HVAC contractors being like, well, central returns are for like beginner stuff, but if you want to be serious about
mm,
HVAC, you do room returns. And I don't find like generally I'm kind of coaching people towards this central return thing. And I love that you specifically called that out as something that you liked about the system. Can I ask, so the Zehnder, were you married to that? I don't remember from the get-go, or did you look at a bunch of options and then decide on that one?
yeah, so I looked into Braun as well. The reason I went with Zehnder is I couldn't get any quotes that were reasonable from an install perspective. Okay, so we're going a little bit into cost efficiency here for the actual install. And Zehnder has their own piping system, like the comfort tubes that it's very easy to put in. So from a labor install perspective, it was much easier to do that versus having the HVAC company come and give you a quote for, okay, we need to do rigid for the Braun ERV and do this and do that. And that was the main driver there. Also, a lot of the HVAC companies in the area in St. Louis, they have no idea how to install those things. And the ones who do, good luck getting a reasonable quote.
Mhm.
Um, so, so for me, it was more expensive for sure as a system.
Very interesting.
Um, but yeah, the install was easier for sure.
Yeah.
Um, so that was the main driver there. Humidifier, I think steam humidifier, that Aprilaire 800 is the go-to for pretty much everyone. It seems like it's a gold standard.
Let me mention something actually, because that's an interesting point. When you did this, Aprilaire had discontinued their 801, which is a modulating unit.
mm,
I don't have your notes in front of me, but I am positive none of my clients ever have more than a 10-gallon per day humidification load. And that often gets
mm,
cut in half because you use an ERV core, in half at least.
yeah,
So technically, Evangelos's humidifier that thing pumps out like 36 gallons a day or something like that. He only probably needs,
yeah.
like, let's just say 3.6, so a tenth of that. And that one is not modulating. So it comes on at full speed, but as long as you've got the amount of downstream length of duct where you're installing it, then it's fine. The modulating one is called the 801. He's got the 800 here.
Mm. Yeah, and I've done the calculations based on you had a video where you go through the, grains, blah blah blah, to come to a size, and I'm pretty sure I'm grossly oversized there, but
There's really nothing they make in the US for,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
so you need to,
Um, and then what's also interesting is that it hooks into the Mitsubishi heat pump. It connects to the control board. So when it kicks on, it forces the air handler to go into full speed, which is also good. And I'll explain why. When this thing is running, also because it's oversized, it's like a blast of heat and energy at that point that goes into the house. And it's actually saving the condenser from running hard. So what I'll show in another slide is essentially when it's cold and dry outside, like very cold and dry, we had 0 degrees days and -9 degree days. When the Aprilaire is running every hour or 2 or 3, whatever that is, the condenser is not running. So
because you basically have that electric heat generating that steam, and the heat from the steam is you're saying, supplementing the heat from the heat
yeah,
pump.
so, exactly, yeah. And I'm not going to touch the heat strips right now, but essentially, if it's very dry outside, so we've got a cold weather coming in, and the humidifier is running, that energy goes in, it rises the temperature within the house. So then the condenser is thinking, okay, it's 74, 75. I don't need to run as hard. And then it won't go into a defrost cycle that often. So in my mind, these two things combined is a very good strategy for cold climates. Um,
Awesome.
that's what I've experienced, at least. Without it, different conversation. But the two of them we had zero issues with the house staying warm during during the winter.
So you talked about temperature, you talked about the humidity level in the summertime. What is your humidity level that you got this set to in the wintertime?
Okay, I'm a bit of a nerd when it comes to that. So I'll go in and tweak the humidistat depending on what's the outside
Ah,
temperature.
yeah.
Okay.
I call that submarine captaining, by the way. But yeah, I do the same thing
Okay.
in my house.
Yeah, and the reason I do that is in the beginning I've set it around 30%, but then the temperature dropped and you wake up in the morning and you've had humidity on the windows and stuff. So then I started tweaking that to avoid that from happening. So then it will go anywhere from, let's say, 25% to 38%. But again, that's another nice thing about this. Like you can control the humidity that you want in the house. But yeah, I'm going up and down playing with this thing every other day, basically. So from a performance standpoint, and also before we move on, we also have auxiliary heating, 8 kilowatt heat strips. It's only turning on when the heat pump goes into defrost mode. And that's interesting. So it's not going to act as it's not going to try and supplement the condenser, right? It's either on or off, and it's only on when the defrost cycle kicks in. At least that's how Mitsubishi does it, right?
Yeah. And this is actually really interesting. I thought that everybody was always talking about defrost mode flips, right? It starts sending heat instead of bringing heat in from outside, sending the heat outside to melt the ice off of the outdoor unit. And I thought that everybody was insisting that you run cold air through the house at that point. Mitsubishi shuts down the fan if you don't have what Evangelos has got. My system, I
Mhm.
know when it's in defrost because the system shuts down, which is the only time it ever shuts down. So I like this. You're
Uh,
saying that the fan keeps on running when it
yep,
goes into defrost mode. All that happens is the heat pump shuts down so that it can reverse, and then the electric heat strips kick in.
yep,
Cool.
yep, exactly. So from a performance point of view, in the summer, this summer, we had a couple of heat waves above the 100%, 100 degrees range, and I think that's outside of the manual J, if I remember correctly. I think manual J had 98 as the max temperature or something.
Yes, you've actually 93 is your
93.
99%. So that's really impressive.
Okay. Um, so at that point, and I think it was a 5 days in the summer that we had that. The house was not too bad. Some people may complain about the 77 or 78. It's fine. Basement was a little bit cooler as expected. And the energy consumption in the summer was very reasonable. Considering this thing runs 24/7, right? So about 4,800 kilowatt hours a month, which for the size of the house is not too bad. Now, the reason I have those arrows here is because those two windows were not covered. And in the manual J, we had covers for all the windows and everything else. In my simple mind, I was thinking it's not going to make a big difference. It made a big difference. Okay.
Ooh.
This is south facing, so this gets blasted as the sun turns throughout the day. So that big window, not being covered, like drapes or anything, made a big difference. So I
Very
addressed
interesting.
that. Um,
Yep. By the way, the covering that Evangelos is describing, which is default in Manual J, it's written into the manual for us to do that, is blinds that you pull down half covering the window at a 45-degree angle, and the blinds are of medium color. So it's not like you had to do blackout blinds or these, or like a, some kind of a cellular reflective shade or something like that, right?
so I ended up doing blackout, FYI. Um,
You're a stickler. I like it.
yeah, yeah, for those ones. So and they're smart blinds, so they'll just go down and follow the sun basically, and east, west, and so on. Now here in the winter, it was more interesting. And this winter was pretty, pretty not bad, but out of the norm, I'd say, for the area. So from the end of December to like January, we had a lot of storms coming through. We had about 15 inches of snow, consistent temperatures of 14 degrees down to -13. And that's with the wind chill, right? Not the temperature that you see, but so definitely outside again of the parameters of the manual J, for sure. And at some point reaching the limits for what Mitsubishi guarantees for the performance of the system, right? At 100% capacity.
So to clarify, from your manual J, the design temp in the wintertime is 8 degrees Fahrenheit, +8. So we're going down considerably below that. And yeah, you're right. Mitsubishi will guarantee down to 5 degrees, +5.
Right. Yeah. Now during that, again, house temperatures fluctuated a bit, but again, within 73 to 76 for the two levels that we have. Basement was cooler, and the only thing I did there, I'm going to be honest, is just run. I've got a Dyson fan that also does heating. Basically, it's like a filter, but
Space
also
heater.
does heating. A space heater, yeah. So we run that. The basement is 1,100 square feet. It keeps the basement at the temperature that it should be during those cold spells. Now, consumption, on the other hand, went up. And the main reason for that is that the 8 kilowatt heat strips. I guarantee you that. I've got a new system coming in now, so I can monitor the individual systems circuits within the panel. So I know the draw. I'll be able to confirm that. But I'm pretty sure it's the heat strips. So those defrost cycles definitely bite you.
Can I ask, actually? So did
Yeah.
you consider just shutting off the heat strips so that the system the fan would actually cut off and the heat strips wouldn't kick on, and you just wait for in my experience, it's like only a few minutes, like maybe 10 minutes or something like that it's off. But I'm not.
You sure about that? Because
No,
I've
I'm
seen
not.
defrost cycles for longer. That's why.
Oh yeah.
And now,
Do you have the tracking on that?
no.
Oh, okay, that's all right.
Yeah. So unfortunately, Mitsubishi doesn't show you that. But the only thing you see is defrost on the thermostat. But I didn't want to risk it, to be honest.
Yeah. No, that's okay. Yeah, you were
Yeah.
watching it, and no, you don't want to push it too
Yeah.
much. I mean, I would do that because like that's my thing. Where'd you get this?
Yeah.
I like this layout of your data here. Where'd you get that weather data?
It's from a website. I don't remember the actual
Okay.
website, but I just want to show that, you know, the weather pattern for a week.
Yeah, I
throughout
like the
January.
wind. That's really interesting.
Very windy, and the wind chill, like it was crazy. So the fact that a 2-ton heat pump for 4,500 square feet house, 3 levels, did quite good, in my opinion. And this is more of a snapshot for the same period in, you know, December to January. Again, we can see fluctuation, but we've got the max 76 down to, this is the basement, basically dragging a little bit to 71. But the averages, these are the level 1 and level 2 bedrooms. So you can see the averages 73, 74, 75, 74.5, 75, 75. So the 3 bedrooms upstairs, they are so close, they're off maybe by half a degree Fahrenheit, which is insane. And then relative humidity, again, very happy with how the humidifier is working.
Wonderful.
So the last thing, okay, learnings, what I would do different. Manual J matters. I think we did the manual S and manual D as well, not to the whole extent, which I regretted at the end, because even though the HVAC company had 30 pages of manual J, they still had some ducts wrong. my advice would be either do the whole thing, or if you trust the company has experience with understanding high performance homes, then they can do the manual D themselves. Otherwise, there's need to be a lot of hand holding. Did you do this dock, 4 inches? Is this 6 inches? That's
Yeah.
unfortunately my experience.
And you're the perfect guy for this. And I really was excited for you to talk about this because frankly, you came along, we worked together before I started doing full manual JSD for my clients.
Yeah.
You were one of the reasons that I swapped from Elite Soft, which is the
Mhm.
software I used to use, over to RightSoft so that I could do full manual D because you and I ended up doing a 3D model and we ended up doing manual D by hand, which I was like, I hate this. This is terrible. So we basically like used a lot of the assumptions that we got, and we did kind of a half-assed manual D essentially. And what I'm so happy to hear is that even the half-assed manual D ended up with the performance that you got. And I
Yeah,
agree that learning finally how to do the actual full thing is better, and it makes it a little bit less
yeah,
handholdy for you.
yeah.
But like if anybody had to do this with a contractor, you're the perfect guy to do it because you're just like on that level where you can help the process along.
Yeah, it's you have to take a lot of the guessing out, and some HVAC contractors will say, "Well, I haven't done this before. I don't know how to do it." So if you have the actual plan and you tell them, "Okay, this is the trunk. This is what you need to do for the ductwork for this room. That's the size," they'll go and build it. In our case, I think we only did the main trunks, and we assumed that they're going to follow what the manual J said in terms of the duct sizing for each of the rooms. They got it wrong for a master bedroom, which is up here, and it's also facing southwest, which gets blasted with heat in the summer. So I had to
Mm.
go in myself and bring in another flex duct, essentially stealing some air from another room.
Yeah.
Not a huge deal. I sorted that out. That's fine. So from a system performance, again, when it's very cold, very dry outside, because of the humidifier, system performs better in terms of kilowatt consumption. And in my opinion, the steam humidifier, even like we're in zone 4 to 5. I'd put it in.
Great.
It's yeah.
And
What I would do,
by the way,
yeah,
just to drive that point home, the opposite of what Evangelos did, if you want a humidifier, is an evaporative humidifier, which actually does exactly the opposite of what he's experiencing. So instead of warming up your house, it actually technically acts like sweating and it'll cool down. You have to put it in a manual J if you're going to do that because it adds like over 1,000 BTUs that you have to then add more heat to make up for. So that's good to hear that you think that made a big difference. And it is good to hear that the defrost cycles you think made a really big ding in your time in your delivery of heat pump.
yeah. So what I would do different, and um, again here now, I think we're at the point where we're just being peculiar because the whole house performs. It's very comfortable. There's nothing to like worry about. It's more like the more you know, the more you find things to irritate you. Right. And one of those things for me is I don't have a great control of air between the levels. So if I were to do this again, I'll probably do a better zoning system with dampers. Not going crazy about it, but at the mechanical room, maybe have a damper per level at that point to be able to fluctuate centrally how much air goes in every level.
And to be clear, you're worried about the basement level mostly, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And also in the summer, it's cool down there. We don't need extra cooling.
Mm.
And in the winter, the level 2 tends to be fine. Warm air rises naturally. Basement, right now, we just have that Dyson space heater. That's it. But, if I had things to take, that would be one. And then if anyone's building, my advice would be don't try and educate the builder if they are not familiar with um, tight homes and efficient homes. I would bring in an energy efficiency company to act on top of, this is what the builder does. Okay, let's pay those guys to do the air sealing, make sure, the sheathing, zip, everything else is sealed properly. I had to do a lot of those things myself. We missed other things, but again, that would take us to a passive house, which you can debate. Your 2.4 AC is 50, you'd be below 0.6, whatever the number is for passive house. Is that big of a difference in terms of performance? Do you need that? Like, I don't know. But again, I'm being nitpicky here now.
No, that's cool. And maybe that makes the difference on the basement temperature
Yeah,
differential, and then you wouldn't need zoning. But I'm not. That's just me making making something up.
yeah. But yeah, just to drive it home, very happy with how this came out. Trust the maths and the manual J, and make sure to follow the assumption that you put in there, because they are important. Even if it's just for window blinds and coverings, they're
Right.
important.
That's awesome. Great. Well, thank you so much for teaching us what you have learned about all this stuff, because it's just hearing it from somebody who's not me, who's like doing this and trying to you know what, the YouTube channel, like you can believe what I say, but also can you? So I love that you took the time to really put this together. Also, I just want to point out I am not I what I really wanted to point out here is not that I did this with Evangelos, and that's I hope that came across with you when we were going over your manual J, that I am not telling you how big your system needs to be. The math is telling both of us. Because at that point, you
Yeah,
need to go and have the arguments with the HVAC installer. And that happens with anybody who has a third party design their system. You're then going to have to take that math and those arguments and go and win arguments with the contractors that you're working with. So is that, you agree?
I agree. And I had a few people say, okay, this looks weird. This manual J is weird. A few came back and said, okay, yep, it checks out. We've run
Nice.
the numbers. Others said, that's not what we do. We do a split system, level 1, level 2. I'm like, okay, thank you for your time. I'll move on to someone else.
Mhm.
So it's also a good way to weed out people that you probably don't want to work with for this sort of thing. Because if you get it wrong, at that point you've got a big problem. Like if they get it wrong, yeah.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, you're so great. Thank you very much again. You guys comment below if you have anything to ask Evangelos. I'll try and drag him over to the comments to like answer some of your questions. Anybody else who has experience with this kind of thing where you got the design and you took the chance and you really were like, I think this is going to work, and it does work, please reach out. If you didn't have it work, reach out and we can figure out a way to diagnose what actually went wrong, because it shouldn't, the math does work when you do it right. Like, subscribe, tune in next time.